Our love lasted no longer than an April day, and I could hear most of what I wanna know is what's going on. What's wrong? How long has it been since you've seen the sun? Made a joke or said a pun, or even made fun of me. You used to make me think that you wanted me. It's so sad to me. How can I mend you now? 1 year, yes, one more by. A little less of my time thinking, little more of my time high. And I wonder why life hangs you out to dry. So I think I might go by the east side. Meet me on the east side of the bridge. We know flight is not right, but you might for what you did. Hang your feet from the east side of the bridge. I know they're near there or here, they're taking my ditch, but I don't care. I'll meet you anywhere, so meet me. Rest of what I wanna know, I can't ask. No things stuck in the past that you maybe should have asked about the last time we spoke about pastimes. Like, are you lonely tonight, or were you only lonely that time? Because time won't be the end of another line. Even if this is the end, are you my love or my friend tonight? 1 year, yes, one more by. A little less of my time thinking, a little more of my time high. And I wonder why life hangs you out to dry. So I think I might go by, hang my feet from the east side. Meet me on the east side of the bridge. We know flight is not right, but you might for what you did. Hang your feet from the east side of the bridge. I know they're near there or here, they're taking my ditch, but I don't care. I'll meet you anywhere. Meet me on the east side of the bridge. We'll let the sunrise be both of our alibis. So meet me. You're like the sea I'm sinking in, falling 1,000 leagues in love. And if I were to meet my demise, I wouldn't regret nor rise above. And if you were to wear a disguise, baby, your eyes would be enough to see your worth and lies far within. I believe I found a diamond in a rough, and I wanna do something with this life I'm lucky to live, for this world I'm living in. So I'll never stop loving, because I am a man. up of more than just the sum of all my parts. And baby, I believe your body's a work of art. So show me an open mind and I will hold you in my arms. So you can feel my heart beat faster for you. Can't you feel my heart beat faster for you? Can't you feel my heart beat so much faster for you? I stand stressed and looking at a mess from the corner by my bedroom door. I never want to see her anymore. I now know nothing could ever be what I thought it could be before. But my eyes keep slipping towards the door. You slip away and out from under my soul implore. 'Cause I have run out of you time, and I will no longer lend you any of mine. As a man I'd planned to enjoy your curving line, but the sand in your hourglass has become too fine. I think less than I should about the mess that I left on my bedroom floor. But after all, she had to be ignored. You slip away and out from under my soul employed. 'Cause I have run out of you time, and I will no longer lend you any of mine. As a man I'd planned to enjoy your curving line, but the sand in your hourglass has become too fine. And I want to see her ever again no more. Yeah, yeah. And I won't see her ever again no more. It's my pleasure, but baby, no more. Oh, because I've run out of you time, and I will no longer lend you any of mine. As a man I'd planned to enjoy your curving line, but the sand in your hourglass has become too fine. Yeah, the river of our love has run dry. It's dark and cold and empty as you're right. And as I arrive outside your lonely door, you realize the time ain't on our side no more. It's just about time. Oh, 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 oh.
Well, that's not right. Well, that looks better. Shit. Hold on, guys. Let's get this squared up. going on, guys? I'm Cole. This is Collateral TV, and we got a pretty exciting next 24 hours or so, 18 hours or so. And so we're gonna get prepped tonight for my debate tomorrow morning in Destiny's Discord over the death penalty. So let me go ahead and pull up the stream. Alright. Okay. Alright, so just getting my opening statement ready to go here. Got my Obsidian file here up top. And yeah, we got a bunch of browser windows that are going to help us craft our beautiful legislation to put before the court. Got myself a haircut today, might as well rock it, right? Alright. In the 1960s, hardly 24 countries had abolished the death penalty. Yet here and now in 2024, over half the world's countries have abolished the death penalty completely as a matter of law. In fact, over 70% of the world's sovereign states have abolished in practice, as in they have either abolished in law or have not carried out executions regardless of law in a decade or longer, and that's the standard set by Amnesty International. Alright, and do not plan to do so except in the most extreme. Some of the world's largest countries still do in fact maintain death penalty both in law and practice. Okay, hold on. Okay. What is it? Asia is that where the Middle East is technically? Yeah, okay. Ivory. Okay, that's Africa. Americas, Asia, Indonesia, Iran, Iraq, Israel. Okay. Death penalty for murder, instigating a minor or mentally ill, suicide, treason, terrorism, and second conviction for drug trafficking. is yeah. India, no. Japan, however, okay. What's the word? Imposed. Have carried out.
saying that they did it. Few cases get more clear cut than that.
48. Okay, hold on. 40 executions, 17, 33, 24, 23, 19, 24, 26, 18, 24. Those are executions in the 20th century. Texas executions per capita. No, I don't know. I don't know if I like this framing here. 268, 78, 87. One point four. Alright, I gotta pee. Hold on. I should have done that before. You know what? I know of some royalty-free music we can listen to. I know it's cringy, but
I had a hand in mine next to me, but at the moment that hand's a ball. A pretty woman put a hex on me, saying now the sky's gonna fall. But she don't know she'll be the next to be crying like a porcelain doll. Cause pretty it ain't sex to me, it's putting your back up against my wall. And if only my loneliness loves loving me, yeah, then why won't Miss Misery leave my leash a little slack? So
shit. Alright, so, do I need to turn this mic up? Probably not. Alright, give me a sec.
Brook will continue to babble on long after the light is gone. And if you heed her song, she'll lead you to Zion. A good book away for Sauvignon, a guarantee, a light left on. Believers and on may both be wrong. I think the thing you can rely on is a riverside road to ramble on, past the last of your destinations, and you can only amble along, hoping it leads you to Zion.
This brook will continue to Babylon. I've been trying to find her heart, but I guess that is gone. That is all I wanted. I thought you wanted the same, and I thought I had found the answer in money, but lost the change. I can't keep following you down these blind roads. Driving with no GPS, I lose you everywhere I go. And I wanted you to call me and say that you were right in front of me. Instead, I'm writing songs thinking, what the hell have you done to me? What the hell have I done to you? I took away your innocence, but I guess it helped you out because you're on your misindependent ship. I just wanted closure, you started it, let me finish it, but I can't get it right unless I write and send my penmanship. We lost the friendship, but gained experience. I was high off your love, but I think I'm getting delirious. You take over my thoughts. Now that I know you hated it, I guess I'm just a blank space, and that would make you Taylor Swift. But let me take this path I chose, cause I'm sick of trying to find happiness in money, cars, and clothes. And I'm sick of everyone telling me that they've been down this road, cause I walked down it and found nowhere to go.
This brook will continue to babble on long after the light is gone. And if you heed her song, she'll lead you to Zion. A good book away for a Sauvignon, a guarantee, a light left on. Believers and none may both be wrong. I think the thing you can rely on is a riverside road to ramble on, past the last of your destination, and you can only amble along, hoping it leads you to Zion.
As I ramble on, trying to find nirvana, I'll have to find it alone. I can see that in your persona. I need to be here alone. There was nothing that you could help me with. At least back then I had somebody to be selfish with. All alone, it's just me and this pen. Lost my life, lost my girl, lost my world, lost my friend. I am in the places in, cause I made it past the misery. misery. I'll never let another person take away my energy. I'll never look back and say I was too scared to go for it. Used to always do that, now I got nothing to show for it. Oh Lord, hose or hosier, take me to church because at least nobody knows me there. People without the vision hate it, but below they're scared. Hope I care a little, but look in my eyes and know what's there. But when the light drops, it turns into a solar flare, and everything's no longer black and white, no polar bear. And everything I thought was real somehow just faded, man. I just wanna look at my dad and say I made it, man. He told me, son, just speak your mind and never take it back. I'm trying to find the path to Zion, I hope I make it back. Until then,
This brook will continue to babble on long after the light is gone. And if you heed her song, then she'll lead you to Zion. A good book away for a soul vineyard. I guarantee a light left on. Believers and none may both be wrong. Think the thing you can rely on. Riverside roads will ramble on past the last of your destination, and you can only amble along, hoping it leads you to Zion. Da. Baby, don't you know, don't you know, don't you cry. Lot of more day to the day that I die. Lot of more day to the day that we die. Baby, don't you know, don't you know, don't you cry. Lot of more day to the day that we die. I had a hand in mine next to me, but at the moment that hand's a ball. A pretty woman put her X on me, saying now the sky's gonna fall. But she don't know she'll be the next to be crying like a porcelain doll. This pretty girl that ain't sex to me, it's putting your back up against my wall. And if only my loneliness of love loving me, yeah.
Alright, so
And why does misery keeping me back? So close to defeat that my feet are slipping through the cracks. How I wish she'd wish away from my back. So damn it, woman, quit testing me in that simmering southern drawl. I let the woman get the best of me, and now she's thinking she can save us all. So lion lady, lay next to me and take shelter from your own squall. This pretty girl, it ain't sex to me, it's putting your back up against my wall. My wall. My wall. My wall. My wall. I know and I do believe it's bad that I cannot leave this bed, cannot escape this hell. So die we might as well. But no, I know you I do defy. No lie that I could tell. So now I
Second death warrant was later finalized after he came to like an agreement with with Alabama that they wouldn't do lethal injection to him again. So, a second death warrant was later finalized, ordering Smith to be put to death on January 25, 24 by nitrogen hypoxia, which was a secondary execution method in Alabama and had never been administered since its implementation. On January 10, 2024, a federal judge ruled that Alabama could proceed with the execution of Smith using nitrogen gas. On Jan 24, 2024, the Supreme Court refused to hear his appeal and denied his request for a stay of execution, and the victim's family, including her two sons, supported Smith's execution. On the other hand, rights groups in the United Nations were concerned that the never-used method of nitrogen gas execution might lead to cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or even torture, and Smith's lawyers earlier argued that in the failed Supreme Court appeal that it was unconstitutional to conduct a second execution attempt on Smith after he survived the first. What's up, Mr. Coke? I am arguing tomorrow against the death penalty. It's my opinion that the irreversible nature of it leads to a lack of any reparations possible should we be wrong. Yeah, I'm against. What about you? Right. No system will ever be perfect. Even people will still be sentenced incorrectly, and innocent people will go to jail, but I believe that with the appeals process, overall, we do eventually get it right, hopefully in as many situations as possible. But yeah, if you there's no take-see backsies. If you find out that you killed somebody, executed somebody, who it turns out later, for example, Carlos de Luna and Cameron Willingham, who a preponderance of evidence proved after they had been executed that they were wrongfully executed, you can't release them and give them some sort of settlement. Yeah, but how do the many need for people to be executed? There's no proven innocent after death. They're not a priority to be proven innocent after death. There's actual people on death row who need to be proven innocent and they're still alive. Hence, that makes my argument for me. Once they've been executed, nobody goes back to prove they were innocent. They can't have a trial and be proven not guilty. So you're asking for an impossible metric. Yeah, so I appreciate you saying that. There's limited resources to go around. Uh, you can say rapists. If it tries to moderate you, I'll tell it to stop moderating you. Yeah, I definitely. Yeah, for sure. I think that there's a. It's unfortunate to look at it this way, but there's definitely a spectrum on which rape occurs. There's some people who rape children, and that's absolutely fucked up. And there's some people who are too pushy and were never socialized to realize that even being pushy can push you over the border into being a rapist. So I believe there needs to be a lot of education for young boys and even some young girls that in my country, the United States at the very least, we as descendants of a puritanical uh, origin, we still don't do a good job of of making examples and educating our children as to what uh, rape consists of. I wouldn't want them to be. But I definitely wouldn't want them executed. Absolutely not. I yeah. I definitely like I have my own history with sexual assault. I don't wish well anybody who was involved in any of those situations except for the people who were harmed by it, one of whom was me. But at the same time, execution for those people, usually we only are you saying like rape and murder or just like straight up rape and otherwise unharmed other than the significant and grievous harm, of course, that rape causes? Yeah, just rape. I think that there should be, if it's proven beyond a reasonable doubt, they should be imprisoned until they can prove rehabilitation. That is, that's even that for me is an impossible standard to actually prove. And I mean, that's the other thing. Rape is an extremely hard crime to convict for. Mostly because we don't believe women as much as we should, and because there's so much stigma against women, even if we have empathy for them for having been raped, there's still a stigma of damaged goods, and so uh, so many women don't even think of themselves as victims, let alone the ones who do often don't want to come forward, and even if they realize that they didn't do anything to bring it on themselves, there's many cases that I've heard of where women said it was more trouble than it was worth to them at the time to attempt to um, get somebody prosecuted for the rape. So, rape is a much harder, um, a much harder binary to come to for me. Um, the binary of whether we should be putting people to death. Um, I was looking it up here. Let me find this. I had it here. Mm-mm-mm. Let me get this. Louisiana judges disregard. let's see here. Yep. Page. Which one was it? 19? No. This one. Louisiana and the U.S. population. Uh, Louisiana, I think this is since 1976 or something. Louisiana's had 241 death sentences that they've handed down, versus the United States have handed down 8,466. 80 of those 241 are still on death row. 6 of them died. So those are unresolved cases. 118 of those 241, roughly half, are now off of death row. 9 of them were fully exonerated. So 127, more than half, well over half, of the death sentences that they handed down have been reversed. And so 155, so roughly 2/3 of them have either been executed or have had their death penalty reversed. So yes, either lessened or in Louisiana's case, they literally have twice the national average of fully exonerated people. There's 155 people since we reinstated the death penalty in 1976 who were fully exonerated. And then, of the 1,359, and this is from 2015, so there's more of both of these numbers now. 155, it's like 160, 170 something, and we've executed like 14 or 1,500. Only 16% of the people that we've sent to death row have actually been executed. Oh yeah, no. Well, this is U.S. This is Louisiana versus the U.S. And Louisiana is definitely an outlier because I looked this up because of how much of an outlier Louisiana is. Louisiana law says that people sentenced to death are entitled to court-appointed lawyers for all of their appeals. Subject to such scrutiny, an astounding number of the state's prosecution have fallen apart. Since 1976, 82% of Louisiana's death sentences have been overturned by appeals judges after defense attorneys exposed serious violations that occurred at trial. Most sentences were reduced to life. Some prisoners were exonerated. So, it's wild how few. A stronger program to get people off of death row or a weaker program to defend them, because according to the DPIC, yeah, Death Penalty Information Center. This has information both on the pros and the cons. The reasons why death penalty is so expensive. First, the number one reason: almost all people who face the death penalty cannot afford their own attorney. Therefore, the state must provide them with an attorney, not just one. Accepted practice is to assign 2 attorneys and pay for both the prosecution and the defense. And those, trust me when I say that being a district attorney And being a prosecutor gets you a lot more political power, clout, and goodwill from the people than being a public defender does. So, a lot more people who have want to prove a good track record and want to go into being either someone for the federal government or running for office or uh, want to be appointed judge, they go to really nice schools and they go work for the district attorney's office in hopes that they'll get to be assistant DA or uh, elected the DA later. And a lot of the most reject, like drinking problem, can't cut it anywhere else lawyers are forced by default to be like the ones that can still practice law after having like used all the other more lucrative options at hand and squandering them. They go to be public defenders. See Better Call Saul, for example. At the beginning, he wasn't shit to anybody and had fucked his life up, and so all he could do was work for like pennies on the dollar working as a public defender. And so you got a power differential between the attorney pool in public defenders and the people who are chomping at the bit to make their bones prosecuting the most salacious cases of rape and murder and uh, burglary, white collar crime. Any of these uh, any of these DAs are far more driven, you might say, and far less uh, spread thin. There's plenty of government budget to go around for prosecuting people. It's a huge industry. So the the idea that so many death penalties are overturned on appeals is frankly not surprising. Most of them are due to the fact that they had inept counsel, inadequate counsel to begin with. But I appreciate you hearing me rant. And I definitely appreciate you coming in to discuss this with me, man. See, some people think so, but I'd say most of the world disagrees, since in the 60s only 2 dozen countries had abolished the death penalty. Now over 70% of the world's countries have either abolished it in practice or in law. That being said, I was listening to one of the other debates on this topic in the forum that this round of 32 tournament in Destiny's a side Discord in Destiny's Discord server, and I was getting a little bit of inspiration, and I I was listening to one of their arguments and disagreed with one of their arguments, and I wrote down in my notes to formulate into either my opening or my closing. Consider the fact that even with life in prison without parole, who knows what technology will exist in the future that might afford even our worst criminals voluntary or semi-voluntary compulsion not to reoffend. Think Neuralink in 30 years. What if we could put, like, have you ever seen Star Wars? How they have like a restraining bolt that they can put on droids that can make them not do shit? Well, maybe somebody did in fact make a mistake that they regret now, but they fully intended to and premeditated the murder of somebody. Don't you think that if they regretted it and wanted to spend their life atoning for that, that they'd prefer not to be executed? Most people don't voluntarily go to the death chamber. Absolutely. But that's based on the fantasy of the future for sure. But if we execute them now, that potential for the future, including many others, such as they could volunteer for having lobes of their liver or kidneys donated, they could be parts of research experiments, they could, I mean, if we come up with the Matrix later on, we could plug them into a computer in the corner of their cell where they couldn't hurt anyone in their virtual reality, but they could still perform jobs that needed to be performed. There's so many different ways that somebody could make restitution for what they had done. No, the the cost. I showed you that page on the cost from Death Penalty Information Center. The death penalty is far more expensive than a system utilizing life without parole sentences. The reason being, the only way that the public can stomach the idea of us actually executing someone is that they've had their day in court, and their year in court, and their decade in court. So they get appeal after appeal and motion after motion and uh, like request for clemency after request for pardon after request for stay. Yeah, that's a common misconception, my friend. It really is, um, and it's profitable to both the defense. It's profitable to the attorneys in this situation the most. Our taxpayer money goes to so many uh, extra people that we have to hire to do pretrial motions and pretrial depositions and uh, forensic evidence finders and then forensic evidence analysts and then analysts to overturn the analyst's opinion that we didn't like when we got it so that we can still uh, try and prosecute this person. Jury selection. There's people who get paid like $50, $60 an hour just to sit there and tell the prosecution or the defense who on their little algorithm looks like they're going to be better for their case. And often it is based on looks. A lot of black potential jurors, and I really don't want to get into the race debate because that's not what I'm going to be arguing on the case of tomorrow, and I believe most people will admit that the justice system is racist in one way or another, and the only way that that affects my argument on the death penalty is if there are problems of race in our system, then how can you be okay with a punishment that is wholly irreversible? In fact, people who go to prison lifetime without parole get far fewer appeals. to their conviction than do people who get the death penalty. Because so many people are uneasy about the fact that we, the state, are taking someone's life. And we are unsettled by the completely unavoidable eventuality that someone has or will be executed wrongfully. And so we give them appeal after chance, after reconvening, after like more evidence can be brought to the court's attention. So now we have to have a retrial or a mistrial because one person on the jury had moral qualms that got past the jury selection uh, process, and they had to be completely unanimous to give the person the death penalty. And so they go and spend 20 days in the jury room on the taxpayer's dime, coming to no conclusion. So it was a mistrial completely. Everyone go home and look at your case again. We'll see you in a year. He stays in jail with no disposition of his case, and the lawyers get to uh, chalk up another set of charges on their debits for the year. Right. I would not shed a tear for the Boston bomber. It's not about the worst people in my mind. It's about the potential for people who are undeserving. And the fact that if he gets the death penalty, he'll just keep getting his chance to get back on the cover of frickin' Rolling Stone and back in the news and back in the newspapers, because once again he's appealing and it's coming close to his execution date, and he's gonna plead with the governor and his lawyer with the Innocence Project to screw any lawyer who wants to defend that guy. But on the other hand, even though we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that this is the guy who did it, we got him on video, he's admitted it, any of that, it's the principle of the thing. It's simply the principle of the thing. Many people say that people should be executed on principle. I say that people should not be executed lest we end up murdering someone, because murder is defined as the unjustified killing. I wouldn't mind him gone, but I would never sanction the death penalty for him. If he died of natural causes tomorrow, I would say all is well and good in the world. But if we put him to death tomorrow, I would argue for his right to remain alive, despite the disgusting shit that he did to the victims of the Boston Marathon bombing. I empathize fully with the people who want him dead. But the problem is, there's people who are trying to tug heartstrings with that example, because it was young children who died and were maimed. And it's not the worst cases that set the rule. It's the exceptions that prove the rule. If there are even one life lost that didn't need to be lost and was wrongfully executed because of our system, invalidates that system in my eyes. This is the debate is up to me as the pro side of the argument to set the stage. And I plan to do it from a cost and a cost in both lives and in money. So literally just the utilitarian cost benefit analysis. What could we spend the money on that we spend fielding these appeals? We could set up trusts for the children of murder victims that would send them to college for free. Uh, no, I think it is ethical to perform a cost benefit analysis. I'm arguing that my personal preference aligns with what I believe is best for society as a whole. And I call me a complete soft-hearted like pansy boy all you want, but I truly do believe that people can be redeemed. Most people. I also believe that there are motherfuckers out there who have said, fuck it all, fuck you, and you. I killed that person, and for whatever deep seated reason within him, usually a him, but sometimes a her, within them, they take pleasure in the fact that they have ended someone's life and ruined somebody else's because of it. That person isn't the one that concerns me. It's the person like Carlos de Luna. Go look at the Netflix documentary The Phantom. He went to jail because it was pretty hard to tell the difference between these two guys for witnesses. This is Carlos Hernandez, the guy who killed somebody. This is Carlos de Luna, the guy who got executed for the crime. This guy was like low intelligence and super suggestible, and he got fingered for the crime. So he got executed, and a great many people have completely copped to the fact that an innocent man, in all likelihood, did die. Because are you talking about just vengeance, or are you talking about deterrence? Are you saying that people who think that the state will execute them for murder are less likely to therefore commit murder? Or are you saying that they just deserve it and you are fit to judge them and put them to death? I don't get why sometimes these headphones go out. You're right. Deterrence doesn't work. And they say, I mean, I'm not in any way religious, but even the most fundamentalist Christians can admit that both in the Old Testament and the New, they said, vengeance is the work of the Lord, leave vengeance to the Lord, and he who is without sin cast the first stone. It's it, are you willing, so you're willing to be the guy who flips the switch, sending someone to the gas chamber, the lethal injection, or the electric chair? Are you willing to do that and stake your life on the fact that if he didn't do the crime that he was convicted of, that you, as being a murderer, therefore, should then be executed for that? Because if you execute an innocent man, you're a murderer. And I don't support you being executed for that crime. So, if your sister, mother, brother, son, father was murdered, obviously you would want vengeance on the person who did it. If your sister, mother, brother, son, father killed someone accidentally, but for all intents and purposes it looked like he had done it absolutely on purpose, you'd be completely cool with it if he was executed. Society needs people to be exempt. Right. But you're setting up a system that is doomed to fail, and fail on purpose. Because not only are humans not perfect, they also have the capacity to be corrupt, which is the very reason why you want the death penalty, is because people can be corrupt. Who's to say that the people who are corrupt aren't turning the wheels of justice themselves? I mean, it was a Jewish scholar back in like the year 1200 to make the first argument for no, it's a slippery slope. If you execute people for if you set up a society that executes people for crimes that cannot be proven in a flawless, algorithmic, mathematical, omniscient perfection, if you're going on witness testimonies, and more often than not, jailhouse snitch testimonies, and the eyewitness testimony of people with corrective lenses that were extremely emotional and traumatized by what they witnessed, and are coerced by policemen who are coerced by the system, because tourism will be affected if they don't effect an arrest within the first 48 hours. So they're under a bunch of pressure. So they poke some 15-year-old Latino kid in the chest until he says, "Yeah, I guess I did that," in order to just get the fuck out of the room with the really intimidating policeman who's telling him that you don't want to know what I'm going to do to you if you don't sign this paper that says you did this. It's a slippery slope, my friend, and I don't wish on my worst enemy that he finds himself in an interrogation room and subsequently a jail cell accused of a crime that he didn't commit. And like you said at the beginning, I know that I may be very direct in what I'm saying and my tone may be very forceful, but it's all love. Like, I genuinely appreciate having someone to talk to about this.
So this case was an actual case talked about a minute ago. In the opening, Dennis Prager is talking about the process of
to give the state that power.
That was Jordan Peterson there, expressing to Dave Rubin his opinion that people can deserve to be killed, but that he just doesn't trust the state to wield that much power. And this is a common anti-death penalty argument made by anti-big government folks.
Yeah, but what about majority rule with minority rights? The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, but I submit to you, that the many do not need people to be put to death, when they could just as easily be deterred by the thought of going to jail for the rest of their life without parole. Cool, man. I appreciate you. Awesome. Oh, I was responding to your first one and then your second one, which is why I said I appreciate that. When you said the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, I understand that my proposal is that the few in this situation are the few people who will be wrongfully convicted and executed for murder, and the many are the people in society who are outraged and want to see the person who deserves it put to death for a murder. In most cases, both of those people will be correct. Both the person who goes to jail for the crime and the society that wants that person to go to jail for the crime, because they've been shown a preponderance of evidence that says that person is the person who committed that crime. And I'll admit, they get it right most of the time. But those many in society who want to see to seek vengeance and who believe in their heart of hearts for whatever reason that if they were forced into a situation where it was uh, them like suffering some grievous defeat or killing somebody, and the thought of going to the electric chair would be what stopped them from doing that. First of all, that's disgusting. And second of all, that actually is a deterrent. They believe that, and so they want to send the person to the execution, not only for the fact that this person is dead and it's just desserts and it's the right thing for that person to have his life taken in turn. Those many, they're going to live and go about their lives just fine if they don't get the satisfaction of that person being executed. But the few who are wrongly convicted, their need to not be executed is infinitely more important. So, the needs of the many versus the needs of the few, I I I would argue that the needs of the few, being the needs of the people who are wrongly convicted, outweigh the needs of the many, who are the people who need to see someone executed for a crime. Right. And I, once again, with all due respect and love, am telling you that my position is the more empathetic then. Because I empathize not only with the people who feel the loss of the person who was murdered, but I empathize with the many people who get sentenced to death wrongfully, but also the many people who get sentenced to death because they did do a murder, but the murder was nowhere near as severe as they were accused and framed as in court. So, accidentally, they killed somebody that it turns out the prosecution could establish a nefarious motive for why that person actually profited from the death of said person who accidentally died. I guess you would say that's wrongful. Or maybe they, in a crime, like accidentally killed this person while in the midst of just like misdemeanor battery. So it's not felony murder. They didn't they weren't like pointing a gun at someone and telling them, "Give me your purse," and then fucking Raven from the sky comes down and nudges the fucking gun in their hand, and it ends up killing the person who they only meant to threaten and steal from. That being felony murder, and at least in Florida in the United States, that's considered first degree murder. And if there's enough public outcry for it, I imagine that that person could be sentenced to death. So I I go with the long view and the bright side view as opposed to uh, you say as dark as it is, you believe it's a necessary sacrifice. Me, I believe that that sacrifice is altogether unnecessary. Right, right. It does. And I we can still be friends, bro. But I just personally, like down to the core, ethically, morally disagree. And always have, for whatever reason. Maybe I always have had enough fear of death myself and enough I've had enough of the feeling of being unjustly uh, unduly prejudged. People, I mean, just the way my face looks, people think I'm a douchebag from the moment they first meet me. So, and I've ended up dating girls who told me the first time I saw you, I thought you were a cocky son of a bitch and that I would not like you. And that, I mean, that got to me. And people tell me that you can see frustration or um, resentment on my face when I'm feeling it. But what if that were misappropriated to mean that I didn't seem either remorseful or empathetic if I were wrongfully accused of a crime? Just by the way my face looks. And I've got the ultimate trump card of being a light haired, light skinned, blue eyed man in the year of our Lord 2024. And even so, I fear that from the look of my face, a jury of my peers would look at me and be like, that guy's a douchebag. He probably did it. Cool, man. Like, from my heart, man, thank you for coming to talk with me about this. I'm actually going to write this down in the either the opening or the closing of my debate. Uh, you've really helped me hash this out in my own mind. So you have a great night, man. Peace and be well. Yeah, I feel you. Hell yeah. I appreciate that. Well, I'll let you know. I already follow you, I believe. Yeah, I'm already following you, so I'll come find you. Kick ass. Alright, man. Well, you have a great Sunday. Thanks again. Alright.
I picked a clip of Jordan Peterson there because he has been the narrator of multiple PragerU videos, so if Dennis Prager would like to understand an anti-death penalty argument, I suppose he could just ask Jordan Peterson. Peterson's argument also reveals a contradiction in Prager's position, and it's to do with the size and role of the government. We all know how PragerU feels about the government, right?
And by the way, when does the government do a good job at fixing anything?
The bigger the government, the smaller the citizen.
Why is the government so bad at health care?
The government is killing small businesses, killing them with excessive taxes, overregulation, and complicated compliance.
The worst environmental offenders have been big, repressive socialist governments.
People in government will sell government influence for personal and political gain.
It's mired in bureaucracy and it's fraught with waste.
The more a government tightens its grip, the less an economy grows.
So what's the solution? Less government, not more.
Yes, the government is big, bloated, slow, corrupt, mired in red tape and regulations. It's not fit to run the DMV, let alone a healthcare system. And this is the government that Dennis Prager trusts to competently decide who deserves to live and die? Why? The same state bureaucracy that his other videos describe as inefficient and corrupt is suddenly perfectly competent when it comes to sentencing the death penalty. Is having the power to end the lives of its citizens not the ultimate example of big government? Not to wander off topic too much here, but this is an example of how most of the time when people complain about the size of the government, their arguments usually have very little to do with the actual size of the government. In a less silly world, if someone claimed to be against big government, we might assume that they support things like decreasing military spending, ending wars, demilitarizing the police, reducing the number of people in prison, and relevant for us here, being against the death penalty. If you don't trust the government and want it to be smaller, you probably shouldn't also want it to have an enormous army, an armed police force, and power of life and death over its citizens. Too often, though, people who complain about big government love all that stuff, and what they actually mean when they say big government is solely government healthcare and welfare programs. Anyway, to get back on track, Dennis Prager has decided to break with PragerU tradition and now totally trusts the government to judge and implement the death penalty fairly and accurately. He says the number of innocent people who might be wrongly executed is infinitesimally small thanks to DNA testing and other advanced forensic tools, which make executing an innocent person virtually impossible. The chance of executing an innocent person is, of course, one of the most common and strongest arguments against the death penalty. Because, obviously, if it comes to light that someone was wrongfully imprisoned, they can be let out of prison. But if it comes to light that someone was wrongfully executed, that's it. They're dead. Dennis Prager steps around this argument by saying our modern forensic tools make it virtually impossible to execute an innocent person. But he's missing something there. He's making a rather big assumption. Now, before we get into exactly what he is missing here, let's first imagine an airtight murder case. Let's say a husband and wife are walking down the street when they're approached by a mugger armed with a gun. And in the process of robbing the couple, he shoots and kills the wife. The police are called, and based upon the description of the criminal given to the police by the husband, they pick up a suspect near the scene of the crime. When they bring the suspect to the husband, he says yes, that's him. He's the person who shot my wife. The police then arrest the suspect, and when they later question him, he admits to the crime and signs a written confession saying, yes, I did it. I'm the person who shot that woman. So, case closed, right? We have a positive identification of the murderer from a witness who was a foot away when the crime was committed, and a signed written confession from the murderer saying that they did it. Few cases get more clear-cut than that. So this case was an actual case. The crime happened in May of the year 2000. Two tourists from Georgia, that's the state, not the country, were staying at a Ramada Inn in Jacksonville, Florida. Outside of their hotel, they were approached by a criminal who, in the process of mugging them, shot and killed Mary Ann Stevens. Her husband, James Stevens, identified Brenton Butler, who was picked up nearby by the police, as the killer, and Butler confessed to the murder during questioning. However, as I imagine many of you already suspect, there is more to this case than meets the eye. Firstly, the husband of the victim was mistaken in his identification of the criminal. He just got the wrong guy. And this is a thing that happens. Witnesses make mistakes, particularly witnesses who are just involved in a very traumatic experience. But why, you might wonder, did the wrong guy confess to the crime? Well, during the trial, Brenton Butler alleged that the police physically abused him into confessing. They allegedly, again, my lawyer's reminding me to say, physically intimidated him and hit him several times until he confessed to the crime. This is all the subject of a very interesting documentary called Murder on a Sunday Morning, which I would highly recommend if you want to know more about this case. The film follows Butler's defense team, two public defenders called Patrick McGinnis and Anne Finnell, as they put together the case for Butler's innocence. And they really tear the police apart in the courtroom and expose their awful and incompetent investigation, which is very satisfying to watch. The police, for example, didn't even search Brenton Butler's house looking for the items he supposedly stole, or interview his family members with regards to his whereabouts at the time of the crime.
You knew you didn't have a gun. You knew you didn't have a purse. You knew you didn't have any money. You knew you didn't have a fisherman's hat, right?
That's all correct.
Okay. Did you ask Brent, can I go search your house, your room?
No, sir, I did not.
Did you get a search warrant for his house?
No, sir, I did not.
You wanted to find a gun and a purse and bloody clothes and everything else, right?
Yes, sir. Would have been nice.
So why not get a search warrant?
Well, we just didn't get a search warrant.
And it's not that hard to imagine what allegedly happened here. A tourist was shot and killed outside a hotel. That is not a great headline for attracting more tourists to your town. So there's a lot of pressure on the police to solve that particular crime very quickly. And here you have an eyewitness who has already identified someone in your custody who they say did the crime. And that someone is a teenager who you just need to get to sign a piece of paper to put this case away quickly. So you make him sign the paper, allegedly. And you don't go around investigating other things that you know will make the case against him weaker. So you don't search his house for the stolen items that you know aren't there. You don't interview potential alibis who could get him off the hook. You just pin everything on the witness ID and the confession and hope that that's enough to get the case across the line. So you might ask why I'm talking about this particular case in a video about the death penalty. Butler was too young to be given the death penalty anyway, even if he was found guilty, so that wouldn't apply here. And even if he was found guilty, the real killer was later caught when someone tipped the police off to who it was, so Butler probably would have been let out anyway, even if he was wrongly convicted. But my point here is to show a case in which the criminal justice system, or part of it, in this case the police force, could have a motivation to deliberately allow an innocent person to be convicted of a crime they did not commit. This is what Dennis Prager misses when discussing investigative techniques and forensic tools. Because yes, in many cases we do have very powerful forensic tools, but you also have to be able to trust the people with those tools not to lie, and also to actually use the tools, I suppose. What Prager leaves out is the human element. The police will sometimes, for example, plant evidence. There was a case just recently in New York where an officer was caught on camera appearing to plant drugs in a car. And this is similar to a case from last year when a Florida police officer was arrested after an investigation showed he repeatedly planted meth on people during traffic stops. Police will sometimes take bribes from criminals. They will lie in court, cover up for the crimes of other officers, beat confessions out of innocent people, and so on. Even if all cops are bastards is a little too absolutist for you, you have to admit that sometimes some cops are bastards, and some judges are bastards, and some lawyers, a lot of lawyers, are bastards, or incompetent, or lazy, or corrupt, or just apathetic. The accuracy of a particular investigative technique or forensic method is only one part of the calculation we have to do when determining odds of someone being innocent. We also have to trust the justice system not to lie or cheat or just have made a mistake. You can say DNA analysis of a piece of evidence is almost perfectly accurate, but it cannot tell you whether or not that piece of evidence was planted at the scene of a crime. Now, I'm not saying that's necessarily going to be a very common occurrence, don't get me wrong, but it is a possibility. We have an imperfect justice system run by imperfect people. No one type of evidence is ever going to be flawless, even video evidence. Dennis Prager in his video says, opponents of capital punishment oppose the death penalty even when there is absolute proof of the murderer's guilt. If there were a video of a man burning a family alive, opponents of capital punishment would still oppose taking that man's life. Now, the implication there is that a video would be absolute proof of guilt. But is it really? This is a statement that's going to be less and less true over time, and that's simply because technological advances mean that video is getting easier and easier to fake. It is getting harder to spot videos that are authentic and videos that were created in a computer. Many of you will remember this video from a few years ago of a fake Barack Obama that was created in a computer using an AI video tool. Now, the more observant folks in the audience might still be able to tell this is fake. You can see something seems a little off about it, right? However, it is already eerily similar to the real thing, is it not? And before long, it's going to be very difficult indeed to tell the difference between authentic videos and fake videos like this one. And if you were led by my prompting there to believe that this is a fake video of Barack Obama, then we are already at that moment, because this is not a fake video of Barack Obama. This is a real video of Barack Obama. I just put a real video under the headline describing the fake one. Anyway, me being a smart ass aside, while faked videos aren't a huge problem for the legal system right now, as the technology gets both more advanced and easier to use, it very well could be a problem in the future. And even with a non-fake video, we can still imagine perfectly possible scenarios in which executing a man based on video evidence of him committing a crime would be a bad idea. What if the man had off-screen accomplices in his crime? If you kill him, you've got less of a chance of finding them, right? What if the person doing the crime was someone who was coerced or forced into it by some other person? What if someone threatened to murder his family unless he did the horrible thing on their behalf? Again, as with a bribed judge or planted evidence, I'm not saying that these things would be happening every day, just that it is a possibility. And no matter how unlikely, if you execute enough people, you will eventually kill an innocent person. So the pro-death penalty argument has to be that killing the occasional innocent person is an acceptable risk, because that risk is outweighed by the positives that come from having the death penalty. So, what are the positives to having the death penalty? One you will often see proposed is cost. Why should the taxpayer pay to feed and clothe some horrible murderer who might live for another however many decades, right? It would be better and cheaper to just kill them outright. Well, in practice, this isn't actually true. In the United States, for instance, it is vastly more expensive to execute people than to imprison them for life. Executing someone is a very complicated and slow legal process. Some inmates spend more than 20 years on death row before being executed. It's so slow because there are various stages of review and appeal before the death penalty can actually be carried out. Now, the obvious counter-argument to this is to say, well, what if we just sped that process up a little? If we just executed people right after they were found guilty, that massive expense would not exist, right? And execution would be the cheaper option. And the counter-argument to this counter-argument is that the slow appeal and review process exists for a very good reason. If you thought my proposed scenarios a minute ago as to how an innocent person could end up being executed sounded like ridiculous 1,000,000-to-1 shots, then what you need is a real-life example. So let's talk about the rather infamous case of Timothy Evans, something I imagine some of you will know about already. So Timothy Evans was a Welshman who lived in London in 1949 with his wife and child. And in November of 1949, he went to the police and informed them that his wife, Beryl Evans, had died. And the story he told police was that his wife was pregnant, but since the couple thought they could not support another child, they had taken up the proposal of their downstairs neighbour, John Christie, who had offered to perform an abortion. Christie apparently botched the abortion and accidentally killed Beryl Evans. Christie then persuaded Timothy Evans to go and stay with relatives in Wales while he disposed of Beryl Evans' body and made arrangements for a couple to look after their daughter. So Timothy Evans went to Wales, only to a few weeks later decide to go to the police and tell them what had happened. Only when he first told the story to the police, he left Christie out of it, saying that he himself had been the one to dispose of his wife's body and the one who arranged for his daughter to be looked after. In response to this account, the police searched the place where Evans said he had disposed of the body, which was in a sewer drain, only to find there was no body there and that lifting the drain cover would have been physically impossible.
In the 1960s, hardly 24 countries had abolished the death penalty. Yet here and now, in 2024, over half the world's countries have abolished the death penalty completely as a matter of law. In fact, over 70% of the world's sovereign states have abolished in practice, as in they either have abolished in law or have not carried out executions regardless of law in a decade or longer. This is the Amnesty International standard for de facto abolition, and do not plan to do so. In such cases, only the most exceptional justifications would warrant its use, such as in the most extreme cases of wartime necessity, as in Israel. Consider the modern era high of 98 executions in the U.S. in 1999. More recently, there were 17 in 2020, 11 in 2021, 18 in 2022, and 23 in 23. Giving us a rounded average of 17, an over 80% reduction from the death party of 1999. Wait for it. Come on. As of this debate, only a single execution has occurred in 2024. One, Kenneth Eugene Smith. Smith's death came about slowly, his body desperately gasping for breath as he expired at the hands of the new experimental and horrifying method simply listed on deathpenaltyinfo.org as nitrogen hypoxia. President Joe Biden was the first president elected on an anti-death penalty platform. According to CNN, Biden pledged on his 2020 campaign website to work to pass legislation to eliminate the death penalty at the federal level and incentivize states to follow the federal government's example. And here's a source for that. Reverend Sharon Risher of Mother Emanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Charleston, South Carolina, states that despite her wholehearted support for Biden as a politician, his lack of concrete steps to fulfill his campaign promise since his inauguration leads Risher to feel like maybe he was saying what he knows people like her wanted to hear. Reverend Risher's mother and 2 cousins were among those murdered by Dylann Roof in 2015. She supports the movement to abolish nonetheless. A recent discussion on capital punishment I had with a viewer of my stream, and believe me, there aren't many, led us to discuss the concept, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. This was his response to my claim that the idea that an innocent person might be executed for the heinous crime of another. I asked him whether he considered deterrence or retribution to be the need of the many in this analogy. He admitted that he didn't believe the death penalty works as a deterrent, and that if he was being honest, he thought that vengeance in certain outlier cases was justice. I posited to him that, in my estimation, the needs of the many for vengeance, even in aggregate, were far lower on the hierarchy of needs than the needs of the few, in this case, the unjustly condemned, whose needs and the intrinsic justification of those needs do in fact outweigh the needs of the few. In short, one person needs to live far more than many people need vengeance, however fleeting or long-lasting the satisfaction it would provide. In the 1960s, hardly 24 countries had abolished the death penalty. Yet here and now in 2024, over half the world's countries have abolished the death penalty completely or as a matter of law. In fact, over 70% of the world's sovereign states have abolished in practice, as in they either have abolished in law or have not carried out executions regardless of law in a decade or longer and do not plan to do so, the Amnesty International standard for de facto abolition. In such cases, only the most exceptional justifications would warrant its use, such as in the most extreme cases of wartime necessity, such as is on the books in Israel. Consider the modern era high of 98 executions in the U.S. in 1999. More recently, there were 17 in 2020, 11 in 2021, 18 in 2022, and 23 in 2023, giving us a rounded average of 17, an over 80% reduction from the death party of 1999. As of this debate, only a single execution has occurred in 2024, one Kenneth Eugene Smith. Smith's death came about slowly, his body desperately gasping for breath as he expired at the hands of the new, experimental, and horrifying method simply listed on deathpenaltyinfo.org as nitrogen hypoxia. President Biden was the first president elected on an anti-death penalty platform. According to CNN, Biden pledged on his 2020 campaign website to work to pass legislation to eliminate the death penalty at the federal level and incentivize states to follow the federal government's example. Reverend Sharon Risher of Mother Emanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Charleston, South Carolina, states that despite her wholehearted support for Biden as a politician, his lack of concrete steps to fulfill his campaign promise since his inauguration leads Risher to feel like maybe he was saying what he knows people like her wanted to hear. Reverend Risher's mother and 2 cousins were among those murdered by Dylann Roof in 2015. She supports the movement to abolish nonetheless. A recent discussion on capital punishment I had with a viewer of my stream led us to discuss the concept, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. This was his response to my claim that the idea that an innocent person might be executed for the heinous crime of another. I asked him whether he considered deterrence or retribution to be the need of the many in this analogy. He admitted that he didn't believe the death penalty works as a deterrent, and that if he was being honest, he thought that vengeance in certain outlier cases was justice. I posited to him that, in my estimation, the needs of the many for vengeance, even in aggregate, were far lower on the hierarchy of needs than the needs of the few, in this case the unjustly condemned, whose needs, and the intrinsic justification of those needs, do in fact outweigh the needs of the few. In short, one person needs to live far more than many people need vengeance, however fleeting or long-lasting the satisfaction it would provide. Alright. I gotta pee, guys. shit. I'm back.
There sundown, through goggles or underground. Suddenly, California can't be found. We should all take a good last look around. It's closing time. I leave home, the neon glow and the open sign. You're coming anytime, but you passed it by the road you're on. Gotta try to turn around your own design. Oh, but you're running out of time. How long do you think we'll stumble around and drown, saying the structure of the world was faulty found? For what it's worth, the earth is round. Ain't got no good news to say, so say nothing at all, at all, at all. How long till the third tallest tower falls? Standing on the patio outside your door, I knock once more, wishing that you loved me so much more, and that you'd open up this door. Baby, if you could somehow see the simple man I could be, I think you love, my love, and if you want it, then it's yours. Got a ticket in the crowd outside your door. I feel ignored, but now I know why I hold the number 4. And know you'll never love me more. Baby, if you could somehow see the simple man I could be, I think you love, my love, and if you want it, then it's yours. Hanging on the handle on your door, never felt less like a man before. Can't you see that I need this, and we could be so damn much more? Oh baby, if you could somehow see the simple man I could be, I think you love, my love, and if you want it, then it's yours. Since you left me guessing at the scene of this crime, baby, I've sought to find out heaven, everything you've left behind. Got the memory of the moment you last lived in my mind. However, heaven right here on earth is now so hard to find. So I will travel to eternity to see creation's most beautiful sight. If to me your heaven, your gates are even open past tonight. And if I say it, you can trust it's true, 'cause I have put my trust in you. So lie is what I must not do, unless you're loving just with you. Just with you. Since you left me guessing at the scene of this crime, baby, I've sought to find out heaven, everything you left behind. Got the memory of the moment you last lived in my mind. However, heaven right here on earth is now so hard to find. So I will travel to eternity to see creation's most beautiful sight. If to me your heaven, your gates are even open past tonight. If I say it, you can trust it's true. 'Cause I have put my trust in you. So lie is what I must not do. Unless in love and just with you. Just with you. Don't you wonder where the fireflies go when it's raining? No, no, no. Don't it make you wonder where you're supposed to go? And don't you wonder what a yes would mean when you're saying no, no, no? Well, don't it make you wonder what you feel to know? It's just like those fireflies. We got a reason, yeah, a reason to hide, and we want to come out from inside. But we're sleeping with our eyes open wide. Don't you wonder day to day how the sun decided on that beautiful yellow glow? Don't it make you wonder what the time will show you? And don't you wonder why the biggest rocks always tumble while the water always seems to flow? It kind of reminds me of the people I know, and I know you. It's just like the sun in the sky. We got a reason for giving people a dark side, and we want to come out from inside. But we're sleeping with our eyes open wide. Look at don't matter, don't you want a day to day, day to day? Don't you want a day to day, day to day? Don't you want a day to day about the way the words you say they turn monotone, and that's why you find me here today, singing mellow melodies to the microphone. Wherever your fears bring you is where I'll see. You know, our fears are the same. Please believe you never really know what it is you could have needed. If it's only what you want, and you never really know what it is you could have seen. If it's only what you've been shown, don't you wonder when the fireflies go when it's raining? No, 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 no. Don't it make you wonder what you need? No. Baby, now I know I loved you like a funny story of a favorite pastime. Remember when you came and sat here at my side? First time I ever really sang my mind. Layla left you for dead, no. Upon return, nobody did I find. I lost my hair, left you behind. How I wish I could have turned back that time. But today I'd say could be a good day. Sun on ocean waves that make the spray that huddles to my face when I huddle through the space between me and the golden rays. Let's play upon this place. time. Oh, today I say it's been a good day. The sun on ocean waves that make the spray that hurtles to my face, where that hurtle fill the space between me and the golden rays that display upon this place of ever cleansing slates and ever shifting sands and yet ever uplifting hands. I fell up out of love. I don't know how I came back down, 'cause I felt like I lost gravity without you around. I don't know if I am stuck or how to get around this ever-growing cavity where once my heart was found. Oh, but today I say it could be just 'cause the way I say it could be how to change the way
Alright, okay, alright, okay. Alright, I think it might be time to play some video games. But what do I want to play, boys? Nah. Alright. In fact, I believe it is time for this little piggy to go to bed. Alright, that's that. Beds, time for beds. Alright, we got a nice 3-hour stream going, and I'll be back on by probably like 8, latest 9, maybe 10, but yeah, unless he tells me I can't stream it, I'm gonna stream the debate tomorrow. So, yep. Alright, everybody have a good night. Peace and love, y'all.